Welcome to the Real Life Moms podcast, where we put ourselves at the top of our to-do list. I'm Lisa Foster, your host, and today I'm here with a fellow mom and author, Angela Burk. And she is here to discuss her new book, Real Girl's Guide to Midlife, and also to help us write our own midlife stories. Hi, Angela. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
I'm going to just start out, even before I ask you about your book, is what ages do you consider to be in midlife?
I wish that there was like a magic decade or a magic period. And I don't think that there is. I think what happens and the entry into midlife is different for every woman. And for me, and for a lot of the women that I talked to in the book, it's hit us in our mid 30s. And personally speaking, that period of time was a really big one for me. I was a mom of two at that point. I went on to have a third. I was in a marriage that, if I'm honest, probably had a few cracks in it. I was at the first of many career crossroads. My cycles were starting to change subtly, but definitely noticeable. I had some weird stuff come up with my appearance, nothing tragic, but just enough to go, oh, okay, this is what my mom, who's 19 years older than me, was talking about. And so for me, I think it started in that kind of my mid 30s. And I think I'm still in it. I talked to a lot of women in their 60s and 70s. And even the oldest real girl in the book is 82. And I'd say that all of that is still, you might not biologically be in midlife, but we are in this period of transition and change. And I think it probably starts in our 30s and it just continues on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I feel when we got on, you're like, you might not even be in midlife. And I was like so impressed. I was like, yes, I am. This is my life.
But I am. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel you saying that in your 30s. I feel that because I almost feel like when my kids were in kindergarten, my daughter was in kindergarten. So this is 19 years, like it's been a while. She's 19 now. It's a while ago. And I guess started having a lot of changes with my cycle, like where I started talking on the playground saying, hey, does anyone experience this? Because like it's a little weird and there's a lot going on here. And yes, some moms that were older moms, I would say, came to the table and it was so nice to have. So I didn't think then that I was even starting that midlife transition because my kids were young and I thought young. Whereas now I don't classify myself as
No.
yes.
There's a couple things about that. So number one, I actually first had this book idea when I was 35. And the book was going to be called The Real Girl's Guide to Over 35 because I was struggling with a lot of these questions and I was confused. And for me, this was before social media, right? Really. And I was looking around my friend group, my coworkers, and everybody seemed to have everything together. Everybody was shining. So I thought it must just be me. And so I started jotting down ideas for this book. And do you remember those old file folders?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So I put everything into a red folder. And the folder literally and figuratively got buried for 20 years. And then fast forward, I was 54, I retired. I was cleaning out a really small pile on my desk and I found the folder, is basically what happened. And I opened it and I was like, look at that. Turns out I lived through some of the things that I was struggling with at 35. I have a whole new list of things that I'm confused about. And still more people were talking for sure, but not in the language that was resonating with me. And so I was like, I think I'm going to write this book. And so that's what I did. Yeah, it was an interesting period of a lot of change for me in my 30s. And I think my 40s too, a new set of changes, but a lot of transitions. And what happens, I think, too, is that they hit us all at once. Those of us who work, you're faced with career crossroads or decisions. Then there's relationship. Then there's, if you're a mom, there's motherhood. Then there's friend groups, and you just keep layering it on. And the backdrop of all of it is just the hormone stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about this book.
Yeah. So again, I was struggling with all these things, right? And at 35 in my life, I lived a lot in that 20-year period. And so when I found the folder again, I was retired and I opened the folder and I went through a very similar talk track that probably carried with me throughout most of my life, which was rooted in the things like I'm a peacekeeper, I'm the steady one, I'm the one that people go to get things done. I have to manage the emotional regulation for everybody around me. I fix problems, I build things like so. And with that often would come a talk track that might sound like, who am I to think I could do this? Or I can't possibly say this. Or why would my opinion be more valuable than the opinion of people who have more experience or years on this job than I do? The good news at 54 is that those questions were very short in length, and I short circuited them. So they did pop up in my head. I'm not a writer. I'm not a doctor. I'm not any of these things. Who am I to think I can write this book? And then I quickly got to, why the heck not? What I did also during that time was, again, the way I constructed this book was it covers a lot of topics. I wanted my story. I wanted other women's stories, and I wanted experts. And I went to a bookstore. So my partner lives in Australia. So I was with him, and I gave myself 20 minutes in a bookstore because I was like, look, maybe there's already a book out here that covers the things that I want to cover from a perspective of just a real girl. I'm not a doctor. I don't want the scientific stuff. I'm not a celebrity because, hi, I'm not a celebrity. I'm not a
Yes, you are.
scientist. I'm not a life coach. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a girl. So I gave myself 20 minutes in this bookstore. I picked up 7 titles. And I literally, my arms were trying to balance all these books. And I was like, okay, I can't read 7 books. There's nothing about this that sounds interesting to me. I am going to write my one book because I think that there's something in it. And so that's what I did. And I started writing, and yeah, it just all came together.
Yeah. Okay. So you interviewed a bunch of women in the book,
Yep, I
which I
did.
really love, including your own story.
Yes.
And what did you find was very common that during this midlife time that women are going through or getting
Yes.
caught up in, if you will?
Yep. So there were a lot of red threads that I heard and wrote about because of the interviews I conducted and the people that I talked to. And honestly, before I get into those, I do want to just say how affirming it was
Mm.
to remind me that I was not alone. I never was. I was not falling apart. I was not crazy. And so there were a lot of red threads. The red threads kind of deal with struggles hitting us, feeling like we're at a crossroads in many parts of our lives, kids and transitioning of our roles as parents, relationships, careers, identity, appearance, hormones, grief, funny things, not always sad and doom and gloom. We were all swirling with these massive changes. And many of us shared the undercurrent of these very layered and deep stories about who we are and our role in our own life. Many of us are the people pleasers. We're the peacekeepers. We're the ones that have to keep everybody steady. We're the ones that put everybody else's needs above our own, to the detriment of ourselves. And we do it because in some cases it was hardwired. We do it because it was modeled. We do it, in my case, because it was rewarded. I did get a reward for doing those things. It wasn't always a positive reward, but I was rewarded. And those stories, the hardwiring, the way I saw myself in my own life, the way I saw my role in many of these different facets of my life was rooted in this idea that I couldn't make waves. I had to play small. I had to shrink. I had to make sure everybody was good. I had to contort myself to make sure everybody around me was comfortable, because God forbid I had a desire or a want or a need. And so these were some of the red threads that I saw and was able to stitch together through these interviews. And it made me feel less alone, less crazy, and also that there is a way through it.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you say them, very common, like playing small. How many of us? I'm like, yeah, put me in the back. Put me in the back. Please. I don't want to, that's it. But so let's talk about how you talk about weaving and getting through these
Mm,
things that are hitting us as we move through midlife. How do
yeah.
you move through them? It's nice to know that other people are also
Yeah.
dealing with them, but yeah, what are the real things to help us?
I think the first thing, and one of the reasons why I wrote the book, was just to kind of surface and name the struggles,
Mm.
right? And put them out there. And that was hugely beneficial. I think that the other way through it is when you name it, when you put it out there, sometimes it allows us to lose some of the fear and the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment that comes with holding things in. And I also found a very small technique that surfaced for me as I was writing the book was even as simple as saying what I needed or wanted out loud. I have a really big problem with saying no. No is a full sentence. I'm not available, 3 words. But for most of my life, the idea of saying no came with shame. And I felt that there would be negative consequences to everybody around me. And so if I'm going to say no, I'm going to give you a reason, and I'm going to write a dissertation, and I'm going to qualify it and justify it and apologize and ask for permission. It's, man, this is so simple. But as I was writing the book and surfacing a lot of these things and naming some of these struggles and naming some of these old patterns and confronting some of the feelings and the fears and the elements of shame and embarrassment, it puts them out there. And even saying them out loud, like saying what I needed. I work a lot in my office and it's just me. Sometimes I just talk to myself. Like there could be a day where I'm super tired. And the idea when I was younger of asking for rest somehow meant I was lazy or weak. But now if I'm tired, you know what I do? I sit in my office and I say out loud, I'm tired. I need a break. And it interrupts a thought pattern that's wired in me. It just, that's the chemistry that happens when you say what you need out loud, even to yourself, it changes your thought pattern. And when you change your thought pattern, usually your actions change as a result.
Yeah.
So now when I'm tired, guess what? I'll say in my office, I'm tired. I need a break. And that thought changes and it forces me to get up and go take a break, take a nap, take a rest, do whatever I want. So I think that a lot of it starts with kind of just quiet. And for us in midlife, our lives get a little more quiet. Sometimes I don't love that two of my kids are out of the house. The house is oddly quiet some days, but it's given me the mental, emotional, spiritual space to just observe myself and what's happening around me, and then name it and put it out there, change a thought, and then start to act.
Yeah. Yeah. It's instead of just, it sounds when you're tired and you say it out loud, normally we're just avoiding it and pushing through and
Even get to that point. Because the talk track in my head would be like, oh, who are you to think that you could take a break? And then who's going to do the 19,000 things that need to get done? And taking a break, that's for the weak and the lazy. That's not you. Like how warped, when you say this stuff out loud, how warped and twisted is that? But I wasn't alone in thinking a lot of those thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's just when you say it out loud, it just becomes almost comical. Like, what?
Yeah. How much do you think things like hormones, because that's a big area going through midlife, right, play in some of these things that we go through?
Yeah. Look, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not a
Yeah.
specialist, but if you think about it, our hormones, estrogen, progesterone, they have a lot of jobs, not the least of which do keep us as women nurturing and a little soft and a little malleable. Now, those are my words, but they keep us pliable, right? That's part of what they do. And so when those things leave the building, it's no wonder why we have a different perspective. I think the other kind of side to that coin, though, is for me and for a lot of the women that I talked to, and this was reinforced by the experts, was the fact that when you spend a majority of your life acting, behaving, adhering to a set of stories or standards that become wired into us, become our norm, it's exhausting. It is physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally depleting. So you take the hormone shifts, then you take just the mere exhaustion that many of us feel. Then you add on the fact that in some cases, many of our lives are creating more space for us for the very first time. And it's like this perfect storm of awareness. So I think it's absolutely hormonally based for sure. And I think in my experience and a lot of the women I talk to, it's a lot of these other factors that just coalesce at the same time. And then around that, for some of us, are big life changes that happen, right? Some of them are changes in your parenting model. Some of them are relationship changes. Some of them are changes with your own health, your own well-being, your family, your circumstances, your career, your relationship. Like all these things just manifest themselves into change. And then you take all of these things. It's yes, the proverbial straws break the camel's back all at once, it seems.
Yeah, yeah. There's so much going on during this time. Kids are leaving, your jobs could be changing, marriages and relationships are different. Yeah, and then you add on hormones.
Yeah, it's
It's
of
like,
course, it's just all these things that are happening at one time.
yeah, which is a lot. Why midlife, okay, midlife can be awesome too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk
It's so
about the
great.
awesomeness.
Well, okay, so I think you're right. So, first thing, I don't know about you, but when I grew up, the phrase I heard a lot was a midlife crisis.
Yes.
And it just was like, ooh, that's gross. And the
Mhm.
fact that my mom and I are 19 years apart, there were periods in my life where when I was in my late teens and early 20s, my mom was in her late 30s and 40s. And that to me felt old. And I tried to create as much distance as I could from whatever was happening for her. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to know about it. That was old lady stuff. Just step me back. But I do think that for many of us, the connotations of something negative were very prevalent.
Mhm.
What I'm finding for me, I went through, I'd say my 40s was probably the most significant decade of change so far. And as I've talked to so many women in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and the oldest real girl in my book is 82, we have embraced a completely different frame of mind when it comes to midlife. I don't hear crisis anymore. You hear things like awakening, rebirth, reinvention, reclamation, these very positive, these very forward looking, these very clear and happy places. So, first of all,
Mhm.
like that's changed for us. I think a lot of the things that we've been suffering with in silence, the hormone changes, the symptoms, the appearance changes, the grief that comes with a lot of this stuff for many women who came before us, they were not taught to talk about this stuff.
Mhm.
They were taught to
Yeah.
suck it up, buttercup, and deal with it. So I think we're benefiting from the fact that we are talking and we are sharing and we're learning from each other. So that all of a sudden becomes something that's exhilarating. It's
Mhm.
not a crisis. I'm excited. I am looking forward to my 60s. I am looking forward to my 70s and hopefully my 80s because I'm going to live them in a very different way than I thought I would when I was 30 and 40.
Yeah.
Very different. And I'm going to live them differently than my mom lives them.
Yeah. And I love this so much because I feel that it used to think that you're in a career, you're doing what you're doing, and that's it. That's all you have for the rest of your life. And what I'm finding, especially in my 50s, is that you can change at any age. You can progress and learn and build on you, whether that's career, relationships, whatever. There is no age limit. And that's what's so exciting. It's not done. And I
Mm,
think also now that in this period of time, there is more time. Your kids are out the door or not needing as much help or care. So you find this space that you
yes.
can focus back on you.
Absolutely. And I think what comes with that is the recognition that A, we probably always should have been doing that to some degree.
Yes,
And
totally.
B, the world is not going to open up and swallow you whole, nor is it going to open up and swallow your family whole if you put yourself first.
Mm.
It just doesn't happen. And I think for me, the added layer to that is what I want to model for my boys. I do not want to model somebody that is constantly sacrificing and like the proverbial doormat, right? That's not what I want to model. And so a lot of the reasons, even why I wrote the book and all these other things, I have these mantras that I just tell my boys all the time. Half the time I think they roll their eyes and shake their head. But I do think that there's kernels that are sinking in. One of them is we finish what we start. And the other is if you're going to take a risk in life, always bet on yourself. So
Mm.
I have to be willing to walk the talk. And so if I tell them, hey, you don't have to stay in a relationship where somebody looks at you and says, oh, I could be happier someplace else. That's insufficient.
Mhm.
You don't have to sit in front of a doctor who you go to with symptoms and they go, that sucks, doesn't it? Nah, insufficient. Or you don't have to bleed for everybody around you all the time at your own peril. You just don't. So, a lot of, I think, what we're also seeing as a collective is we always probably could have done it. Now's the time to do it. And the world's not going to open up and swallow your family up whole. And we've got to start modeling this, not just for our own kids, but for the generations of women that are coming after us.
Yeah.
Because I want them to have a different experience. I want to be less white knuckling through your 30s and 40s, or be aware of what's around the corner, sisters, because it's coming, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and it's not bad. It's not all bad.
No,
There's a lot,
no,
like,
it's
I
not all
think actually
bad.
there's a lot more goodness in there. With that, what do you think during this midlife time women should really include, embrace during
Yeah.
this phase?
I think a lot of them are just, you've got to stop and just recognize some of your own patterns, right? Are you somebody who tends to put everybody else first? Are you somebody who, like me, struggles with saying no? Are you somebody who's let these old scripts and wirings dictate how you viewed yourself in your own life and the decisions that you make? That's all. This is now the time to do an inventory of those things and be really honest and say out loud to yourself in an empty room to start, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? And be bold and brave to say it out loud and then take the next best step. And so I think this is, in my view, this is not about blowing up your whole life, but it is about naming the things that you want to let go of, naming the things that you want to embrace, saying them out loud, and starting with a move, starting with a step. You don't have to have the perfect plan. Every scenario doesn't have to be built out, but doing something
Yeah.
is where we start. And I think that's the exciting, because for the first time, many of us have, to your point, the time on the clock to do it, the space to quiet the noise, the time to do this little self-reflection and this little inventory that says, what is it that I want? What do I want to do? I just signed up for drum lessons. Here's a really good example. I signed up for drum lessons 6 months ago or 6 weeks ago. Why? Because I wanted to. That's it. And I
Yeah.
take them on Monday afternoons. Do you know how glorious I feel to leave my house at 12 o'clock to take a drum lesson? Why? Because I can.
Mm-hmm. So fun. And
So fun.
here's the other thing, like you taking drum lessons. The other thing about this phase, we care less about what people think. Like
Correct.
we live long enough that it's not that we don't care. They're still caring, but
Of
we definitely
course.
care less. Who cares?
Who
I'm gonna
cares?
take drum lessons and I'm gonna suck and that's gonna be awesome.
And it's going to be awesome. And I do think that this whole kind of giving fewer F's or whatever the phrase is, if you think about the biology behind that, it tracks, right? Because the math just eventually stops mathing. When you put so much emphasis onto everybody else and who cares about this and all the things you have to take on and all the invisible load that we carry, in addition to like our real work that actually appears in a calendar, the math stops mathing at some point. And that math can stop mathing because you just stop and go, okay, I'm done. It could stop mathing because you've dealt with a health crisis or just a massive change that just like lands on your plate and you're forced to take an inventory. Or I really think that we get to this point, like for me, there were a couple of those like moments that forced me to look at things for sure. But also, I just got tired. Like I actually feel like I have very few F's to give anymore. Like I think I've had a lot and I feel like they're not there. And the ones that I have left, I'm directing at myself.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I care less about like other stuff and more about myself and
Right.
what I think about myself. And
Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree with that. So, if you can define like living fully in midlife, what is
Mm.
that look like?
I think it looks a little bit different for each of us, but I do think it's living honestly. It's having the interest and the bravery and the willingness to look at how you're living today. And in areas where you're unhappy, you find the courage to fix those things. In areas that are insufficiently prioritized, you have the courage to take a step to change that. It is embracing all the good, all the amazing, all the slightly unhinged, all the funny, all the serious things, and just going, okay, what am I going to do differently now? And I think the element that sometimes we don't talk about with all of this change is that there is an element of grief, right? For some of us, the idea of change holds really negative emotions. It means a failure. And I'll speak for myself and for some of the women in the book. The idea of change or something being different can sometimes feel like a failure. It could and then you have to grieve that, right? And acknowledge it in order to get to a place of acceptance. But we can grieve a lot of things. We can grieve our changing circumstance. We can grieve relationships. We can grieve a quiet house. We can grieve our appearance. We can grieve a future that we thought we were going to live. We can grieve a lot of things. And so we can sit in the negative associated with that, the fear, the shame, the embarrassment, the guilt, all the things that come with it. But that is all consuming. And so the minute we assess and acknowledge, that moves us closer to acceptance and embracing the idea that change is just that. Different is just different. It's not a failure. And good things come out of change.
Yeah.
And I think that's an element of grief that we don't really talk about. And it's easy, I think, for some of us to get bogged down by I think I had a rule book. Somewhere there was some rule book, and it's like I would judge myself, like, oh, I'm doing this well, and I think in midlife, I became acutely aware that there was never a rule book. The yardstick that I was measuring myself against was something that I created in my own head. And by changing my perspective, it's one of the reasons why I met this man in Australia and said yes to what has amounted to a 10-year relationship. Because I said, screw the rule book. There's no right way to do this. Let's just figure it out. And guess what? We did.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great point. It depends, no matter what you're doing or your kids are doing or like whatever, there is no right way.
No.
And figuring it out is the best way. And there's so many opportunities someone misses or doesn't take or do because we think we have to follow the right path that leads us to the blank, which doesn't even lead you there in the first place.
And then, like, are we sure we even want to go to the blank?
Yeah.
We don't even know. Like, we're conditioned to believe we do. But if we ever stopped and really asked ourselves, is that really where we're trying to go?
Yeah.
But I think that this plays out too a lot in parenthood. So a lot of what I write about, not only in the book, but also in my blog, is really about parenting. And for me, the biggest parenting shift I've gone through was there were two. One, transitioning from being in an intact family to being a single mom. That was a hard shift. And it was, for me, at the time when I was divorcing, my hormones were completely, I didn't realize how close I was to entering menopause. And so I just was not showing up in a great way, I know, for my kids. I took a massive career pivot, massive. And all of these things were happening at one time. But so that was a really big adjustment for me as a mom. The second one has been trying to figure out how to parent adult kids. It's really hard. And there's no book for it. And one of the things, to your point about this rule book, that I've come to realize with the boys is my story is not their story. Their story is not my story. And my job has changed. My role has changed. So I could get really wrapped around the axle about the things that I perceive they should be doing at the pace they should be doing it, in the order that it should all be happening, in my regimented view. And if I do that, I'm going to risk hurting my kids, alienating them from me, and missing just all the things that they have to discover for themselves. And so this idea of the rule book, right? It can be self-directed, but it can also be the lens through which we engage and interact with the people we care about the most. And the reality is, like, nobody teaches us how to do it. Like, there's no book. And so that, I think, from a parenting perspective, I am acutely aware that not only do I have to ditch the rule book for myself and be open and willing, because, like, where in the rule book did it say that a 55-year-old woman should take drum lessons?
Yep.
It doesn't. I want to, so I'm going to do it. But the same applies to the rule book that maybe we're holding a place for, that either is directed to a role we play, or the rule book that we're subconsciously expecting others around us to adhere to. Because I think all those things change a little bit too in midlife.
Yeah. Yeah. We throw out the rule book. There is no rule book.
The
going
rule is
rogue,
there is no
people.
rules. Yeah, we're raw dogging this thing. We're just going to raw dog it all, and we're going to see what happens.
Yeah. And it just reminds me a little bit, like, we also have to let our kids, let ourselves, we are going to have all these inputs, but we got to let them do the thing they need to do, because they need to learn, they need to see, they need to do, but we're also need to also reflect on ourselves, because what we might be thinking really has nothing to do with what they're doing. So sometimes you just have to let them and sit back, and we are here and enjoying our stuff. And they might think we're crazy too, taking drum lessons.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Like, why is mom taking drum lessons?
What is she doing? Does she think
joining
she's
a band?
Yeah. Is she going to go on tour at some point? What's
Yes.
happening here?
Yeah, because you are
Maybe.
famous. We're going back to that famous piece.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly.
All right. Okay. So, what is one thing you want the listeners to start doing after listening to this podcast?
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things in my book I talk about is I call it the manifesto, right?
Hmm.
And the full manifesto is in the book, but I think that this exercise, I've done it with girlfriends, I've done it in a couple of corporate settings, and it is really powerful. So the one thing that I think would be really good is a little exercise we can each do with ourselves. Give ourselves a minute to think about one thing that we want to let go of, one thing we're done carrying, and write it down. One thing we want to embrace or start, and write it down. Then say the things out loud to yourself, because why? When you say something out loud, it interrupts the thought pattern, the old, deeply wired, deeply entrenched thought pattern. And use this as a personal contract for yourself, and write it down and put it on a sticky, put it on a notebook, whatever you do. And when you feel stuck, when you feel confused, go back to the promise that you made to yourself. And those are simple, right? This is not about blowing up your whole life. It's about naming the thing that you want, naming a belief or a habit or a thought you want to let go of. And sometimes that alone can change everything.
So easy. Most things are so easy to do.
Yeah. And it's just, and I think it's also about creating the emotional, spiritual, mental, physical space to give yourself that time,
Yeah.
because you're worth it. Like, you are worth a half an hour to do this exercise, however long it takes you. It shouldn't take that long, but whatever it takes. Like, we are worth it. Nothing in our world is going to fall apart in a span of 60 minutes if we take time to do that one thing. It just won't.
Yeah. Okay. So, where can the listeners find you, and what else do you offer?
Yes, I write a Substack. It's called realgirlsguide to midlife.com. I write about 3 times a week, 2 to 3 times a week. So there's a lot of fun stuff there. My book, Real Girl's Guide to Midlife, is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, where you like to buy your books. And I am on the socials. I'm on Instagram, Real Girls Guide 55. I'm very uncomfortable when it comes to social. So there's a few very cringy reels that are just very raw and humorous, because I don't really know how to do anything other than that. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Awesome. I'll have that all in the show notes so that people can just click on your links and find you and follow and read all the things that you have there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking a bit about midlife. And thank you for writing a book and interviewing all those amazing women so that we don't feel so alone.
You are welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to learn more about Angela and her book, just click on the link in the show notes. And until next week, keep carving out time for yourself and keep putting yourself on top of your to-do list.